Your brother is so hot. Too bad you look nothing like him. Marissa sighed, scrolling through her phone as I walked into our kitchen at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. She didn't even look up from whatever social media rabbit hole she'd fallen into this time. I set my insurance files on the counter and studied my wife of 8 years. Marissa Turner, 36, luxury real estate staging consultant, still beautiful in that sharp-edged way that had attracted me in college. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled despite the late hour, her makeup flawless even though she claimed she'd been home all evening working on client proposals. Your sister isn't bad either, I replied with a smirk, pouring myself a glass of water. Her head snapped up so fast I thought she might get whiplash. What did you say? You heard me. Lana's got that whole yoga instructor thing going for her. Very flexible, I imagine. Marissa's face went white, then red. Are you sleeping with my sister? How dare you even joke about that? You're disgusting, Caleb. She slammed her phone down and stormed toward me, her designer heels clicking on our hardwood floors like gunshots. I can't believe you'd even think about Lana that way. She's married. She has kids. Relax, I said, taking a sip of water and watching her face cycle through emotions like a slot machine. I was just returning the compliment about Sam. You seem to bring him up a lot lately. That's different. Sam is your brother. I'm allowed to notice that he's attractive. And Lana is your sister. By your logic, I'm allowed to notice she's attractive too. Marissa's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. This was the woman who'd spent the last 6 months making increasingly pointed comments about my appearance, my career, my everything. The woman who'd started guarding her phone like it contained nuclear launch codes. You're being ridiculous, she finally managed. I never said anything inappropriate about Sam. You told me last week that if you'd met him first, you might have made a different choice. I was joking. Were you? Because it didn't sound like a joke. It sounded like regret. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the calculations happening behind her eyes. Marissa had always been smart, always been strategic. It's what made her good at her job, staging million-dollar homes to look like magazine spreads. But it also made her dangerous when cornered. I think you're projecting, she said finally. Maybe you're the one having inappropriate thoughts about family members? Maybe I am, I said, setting down my glass. Or maybe I'm just tired of being compared to other men every time you've had a few glasses of wine. I don't do that. Last month at your company party, you told 3 different people that you married down. You said it right in front of me, Marissa, like I wasn't even there. Her face softened slightly, the way it always did when she realized she'd pushed too far. Caleb, Save it. I picked up my files and headed toward the stairs. I have an early meeting tomorrow. Some of us have to work for a living instead of just rearranging other people's furniture. My job is important too. I'm sure it is, especially the client dinners that run until midnight. I didn't wait for her response. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, listening to her heels pace across the kitchen floor below. My phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor, Mrs. Graham, who had the unfortunate habit of documenting everyone's comings and goings in our quiet Maine neighborhood. Marissa just got home. That Tesla was here again while you were at work. Same man as last week. Thought you should know. I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. Mrs. Graham was 73 and collected police scanners like other people collected stamps. She noticed everything and forgot nothing. If she was texting me about Marissa and some Tesla owner, it meant she'd been watching for a while. I sat on the edge of our bed and opened my laptop. Caleb Turner, 40 years old, commercial insurance adjuster for Coastal Maine Insurance. I spent my days investigating claims, documenting evidence, finding the truth in situations where people had every reason to lie. It was methodical work that required patience and attention to detail, skills that might come in handy. The next morning, Marissa was gone before I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Early staging appointment, home for dinner, love you. The word love was underlined twice, which meant she was feeling guilty about something. In 8 years of marriage, I'd learned to read her handwriting like a polygraph test. I called in sick to work and drove to downtown Portland, where Marissa's staging company had offices in a converted warehouse district. The building was all exposed brick and industrial windows, the kind of place that charged triple rent for the privilege of looking authentically urban. I parked across the street and waited. At 9:15, a black Tesla Model S pulled into the visitor parking. The driver was tall, well-dressed, and moved with the kind of confidence that came from never having to check his bank balance before making a purchase. He walked into the building like he owned it. Brent Brentley Dale, according to the business cards scattered on Marissa's home office desk. Real estate developer, married, 2 kids in private school. I'd done my homework the night before, finding his company website, his LinkedIn profile, his wife's Instagram account full of charity galas and family ski trips. At 10:30, they emerged together. Marissa was laughing at something he'd said, her hand touching his arm in a way that lasted just a second too long. They drove separately to a coffee shop downtown, where they sat at a corner table for 45 minutes. I watched from my car, taking photos with my phone's zoom lens. They weren't discussing staging concepts. Their body language was intimate, conspiratorial. When Brent reached across the table to touch Marissa's face, I stopped taking pictures. I'd seen enough. That evening, Marissa came home with takeout from our favorite Italian restaurant and a bottle of expensive wine. "How was your day?" she asked, setting the food on our dining room table with theatrical care. "Productive. Closed the Henderson claim. How was your staging appointment?" "Good, really good. The client loves my vision for the penthouse project." "The penthouse project?" "Downtown luxury development, very high-end, the kind of project that could really establish my reputation." She poured wine into 2 glasses and handed me one. Her smile was bright and guilty, the same expression she'd worn in college when she'd forgotten to study for an exam. "Who's the client?" "Brent Dale. He's developing several properties in the Arts District. If this goes well, it could lead to a lot more work." "Sounds promising." "It is. He's very appreciative of good design." I sipped my wine and watched her face. "How appreciative?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, is he the kind of client who shows appreciation with referrals or with expensive dinners?" Marissa's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you've been working late a lot lately, and you seem happier, more energetic." "I'm excited about my career. Is that a crime?" "Not at all. I'm glad you're passionate about your work." She relaxed slightly. "Good. Because this project could change everything for me." "For us," I corrected. "Right, for us." But she'd hesitated just long enough to confirm what I already suspected. In Marissa's mind, there was no us anymore. There was her future, and there was me, an obstacle to be managed. After dinner, she retreated to her home office to work on proposals. I cleaned the kitchen and went to the basement, where I kept my old filing cabinets from college. In the back of the bottom drawer, I found what I was looking for, a small digital recorder I'd used for interviews during my journalism minor. I tested the battery. Still worked. Over the next week, I became a student of my wife's schedule. She left the house at 8:30 every morning and returned between 6 and midnight, depending on her client needs. She took long showers when she came home late, washing away evidence I couldn't see but could smell, expensive cologne that wasn't mine, wine that wasn't from our collection. I installed a GPS tracker on her Mercedes, the kind insurance companies use to monitor driving habits, perfectly legal for a husband to track his wife's car, especially when both names were on the registration. The data was illuminating. Marissa's car spent hours parked at the Eastland Park Hotel downtown, usually between 2 and 5 in the afternoon. The same hotel where Brent Dale's company held client meetings, according to their website. On Friday afternoon, I drove to the hotel and waited in the lobby, reading a newspaper and drinking overpriced coffee. At 3:45, they emerged from the elevator together. Marissa's hair was slightly mussed, her lipstick gone. Brent's tie was loose, his shirt wrinkled. They kissed goodbye in the lobby, a quick peck that looked casual but felt intimate. Then Marissa walked to the parking garage while Brent headed to the bar. I followed him. "Excuse me," I said, approaching his table. "Aren't you Brent Dale? I think we have a mutual friend." He looked up from his phone, annoyed at the interruption. "Do we?" "Marissa Turner. She's mentioned you." His expression shifted slightly. "Oh, you must be her husband, Caleb Turner." The color drained from his face, but he recovered quickly. "Nice to meet you. Marissa speaks very highly of you." "Does she? That's interesting, because she speaks very highly of you too. In fact, she can't stop talking about how much she enjoys working with you. She's very talented." "She certainly is, especially at staging. She can make any space look like something it's not." Brent shifted in his chair, suddenly uncomfortable. "Well, I should get going. Client dinner tonight." "Of course. Don't let me keep you from your work." I walked away without another word, leaving him to wonder how much I knew. The answer was everything, but he didn't need to know that yet. Saturday morning, Marissa announced she was meeting Ellie for brunch and shopping. Ellie was her best friend and business partner, a fellow stager who specialized in enabling Marissa's worst impulses. "Take your time," I said, kissing her cheek. "I'll be here when you get back." After she left, I went to her home office and opened her laptop. She'd changed her password recently, but I knew her well enough to guess the new one. Brent 2023. Her email told the story I'd already pieced together. Hotel reservations, restaurant confirmations, intimate messages disguised as business correspondence. The affair had been going on for 3 months, carefully planned and meticulously documented. I printed everything. When Marissa returned that afternoon, I was sitting in our living room with a manila folder on the coffee table. "How was brunch?" I asked. "Good. Ellie says hi." She set down her shopping bags and noticed the folder. "What's that?" "Evidence." "Evidence of what?" I opened the folder and spread the papers across the table. Hotel receipts, email printouts, GPS tracking data, photos from the coffee shop. Marissa's face went through the same color changes as a traffic light. "Caleb, I can explain." "Can you?" "Because I'd love to hear how you explain 3 months of hotel visits with Brent Dale. Or the email where you told him you wished you'd never married me. Or the one where you discussed leaving me after his divorce is finalized." She sat down heavily in the chair across from me, her shopping bags forgotten. "How did you—" "I'm an insurance investigator, Marissa. I find evidence for a living. Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" Tears started rolling down her cheeks, but they looked calculated rather than genuine. "I never meant for this to happen." "But it did happen. For 3 months. That's not a mistake, it's a choice." "I love you." "No, you don't. You love the idea of me. The reliable husband who pays half the mortgage and doesn't ask too many questions. But you're not in love with me, and you haven't been for a long time." She wiped her eyes, smearing her mascara. "What do you want?" "I want you to leave. This is my house too." "Actually, it's not." I pulled another document from the folder. "I refinanced the mortgage last month. Your name isn't on the new loan because your credit application was denied. Something about excessive debt and undisclosed financial obligations." Her face went pale. "You can't do that." "I already did. You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live." "Caleb, please. We can work through this. I'll end it with Brent. We can go to counseling." "The time for counseling was before you started sleeping with another man. Now it's time for consequences." I stood up and walked toward the stairs. "I'm going to Sam's house for the weekend. When I get back, I want you gone." "Where am I supposed to go?" "I'm sure Brent can help you figure that out. After all, you're his problem now." I packed a bag and drove to my brother's house across town. Sam lived in a fixer-upper that he'd been working on for 3 years, the kind of project that looked impressive in theory but never seemed to get finished. "Jesus, Caleb," he said when I showed up at his door. "You look like hell." "Marissa's been cheating. I'm getting divorced." Sam stepped aside to let me in. His living room was a construction zone, with paint cans and drop cloths covering most of the furniture. "I'm sorry, man, that sucks. It is what it is. You want a beer?" "I want several beers." We sat on his back porch, drinking and watching the sun set over Portland's skyline. Sam had always been the better-looking brother, the one who charmed everyone he met. But he'd never been married, never committed to anything longer than a 6-month lease. "You know," he said after his third beer, "Marissa called me a few weeks ago." I looked at him sharply. "About what?" "She said you two were having problems, asked if I thought you were seeing someone else." "What did you tell her?" "I told her you weren't the cheating type. Guess I was right about that." "What else did she say?" Sam shifted uncomfortably. "She asked a lot of questions about your work schedule. When you traveled, how late you stayed at the office. I thought she was just worried about you working too much. She was gathering intelligence." "Looks like it." I finished my beer and opened another one. "Did she ever mention anyone named Brent?" "Yeah, actually. She said he was a client who was helping her career. Said he might have opportunities for me too, if I was interested in construction work." "Snake." "What?" "She was planning to replace me with you. New husband, same last name. Probably figured no one would notice the difference." Sam laughed, but it sounded forced. "Come on, that's crazy." "Is it? Think about it, Sam. You're better looking, more charming, and you work with your hands. Everything she thinks I'm not." "Marissa's not that calculating." "Isn't she? She's been planning this for months, Sam. The affair, the exit strategy, probably even the conversation with you. She doesn't do anything without a backup plan." We drank in silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the city settling into evening. Finally, Sam spoke up. "So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to let her dig her own grave, and then I'm going to bury her in it." Monday morning, I went back to work like nothing had happened. My colleagues at Coastal Maine Insurance had no idea my marriage was imploding, and I intended to keep it that way. I had claims to investigate, evidence to gather, truth to uncover. The same skills that made me good at my job would serve me well in divorce court. Marissa had moved out over the weekend, taking her clothes and personal items, but leaving the furniture. She'd also left a note apologizing and asking me to reconsider. I threw it away without reading the whole thing. That afternoon, Ellie called my office. "Caleb, we need to talk." "Do we?" "Marissa is devastated. She made a mistake, but she loves you." "Ellie, with all due respect, this is none of your business." "She's my best friend. That makes it my business." "Your best friend is a cheating liar. Maybe you should choose better friends." "You're being cruel." "I'm being honest. There's a difference." "She wants to fight for your marriage." "She should have thought of that before she started fighting for someone else's husband." I hung up and went back to work. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time, it was Lana, Marissa's sister. "Caleb, I heard what happened." "I'm sure you did." "Marissa says you're not being reasonable." "Marissa says a lot of things. Most of them are lies." "She made a mistake." "She made a choice. Multiple choices over multiple months. That's not a mistake, it's a pattern. Everyone deserves a second chance. She had 8 years of chances. She used them all up." "What about forgiveness? What about consequences?" Lana sighed. "You're really going to throw away 8 years of marriage over this?" "I'm not throwing anything away. Marissa already threw it away when she decided Brent Dale was more important than her wedding vows. You're making a huge mistake. The only mistake I made was trusting your sister." I hung up again and turned off my phone. If Marissa wanted to mobilize her support network, fine, but I wasn't going to participate in their intervention. That evening, I drove to the Knot, a dive bar near the waterfront where insurance adjusters and dock workers drank together in peaceful coexistence. The bartender, Jimmy, had been serving me beer for 5 years and never asked personal questions. "The usual?" he asked when I sat down. "Make it a double." Jimmy poured 2 fingers of bourbon and slid the glass across the bar. "Rough day?" "Rough year." I was halfway through my drink when Jasper Murphy slid onto the stool next to me. Jasper worked construction and had been coming to the Knot longer than anyone could remember. He was also the unofficial keeper of neighborhood gossip. "Heard your wife moved out," he said without preamble. "News travels fast." Mrs. Graham saw the moving truck. She also saw that Tesla parked in your driveway while you were at work. I finished my bourbon. "Mrs. Graham sees everything." "That she does. She also heard shouting from your place Friday night." "Just a disagreement." "About that Tesla driver?" I looked at Jasper. He was grinning, enjoying the drama. "What do you know about the Tesla driver?" "Brent Dale, real estate developer, married to some society lady who runs charity events. Word is he's been sniffing around your wife for months." "Where'd you hear that?" "His wife was at the Eastland bar last week, crying into her martini. Told anyone who'd listen that her husband was having an affair with some blonde staging consultant." I ordered another bourbon. "Small world. Getting smaller every day. Dale's wife hired a private investigator. Apparently she's got photos of him and your wife going into hotel rooms together." "Interesting. Thought you'd want to know?" "I appreciate it." Jasper finished his beer and stood up. "For what it's worth, Caleb, you're better off without her. Marissa always acted like she was too good for this neighborhood." "She probably was." "Nah, she just thought she was. There's a difference." After Jasper left, I sat at the bar thinking about consequences. Marissa had started an affair with a married man, destroyed our marriage, and now his wife was gathering evidence for her own divorce. The ripple effects were spreading, touching lives Marissa had probably never considered. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Brent. We need to talk." I typed back, "No, we don't. I can explain everything." "I'm sure you can, but I'm not interested in your explanations. Marissa says you're being unreasonable. Marissa says a lot of things, most of them are lies. Meet me tomorrow, one conversation, then I'll leave you alone." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "The Knot, 7 p.m., come alone." Brent Dale arrived at the Knot Tuesday evening wearing a $1,000 suit and nervous energy. He looked around the bar like he was visiting a foreign country, taking in the worn wooden floors, the neon beer signs, and the clientele of working-class locals who'd probably never set foot in the hotels where he conducted his affairs. I was sitting at a corner table, nursing a beer and watching him scan the room for me. When our eyes met, he walked over with the kind of confident stride that came from a lifetime of getting what he wanted. "Caleb?" "Brent." He sat down across from me, declining my offer to buy him a drink. "I don't usually drink in places like this. I don't usually drink with men who sleep with my wife." He had the grace to look uncomfortable. "About that—" "Let me save us both some time," I interrupted. "You're here to tell me that you and Marissa are in love, that your marriage was already over, and that I should gracefully step aside so you can both pursue your happiness. Actually, or you're here to tell me it was all a mistake, that you're committed to your own marriage, and that I should take Marissa back because she's learned her lesson." Brent shifted in his chair. "It's more complicated than that." "No, it's not. It's actually very simple. You wanted to sleep with my wife, so you did. She wanted to sleep with someone who wasn't me, so she did. Now you're both dealing with the consequences. Marissa loves you. Marissa loves the idea of security. She loves having someone to pay half the bills while she pursues her dreams. But she's not in love with me, and we both know it. She made a mistake. She made a choice, multiple choices, over multiple months. And now she's made another choice by sending you here to clean up her mess. Brent leaned forward. What do you want? I want you to leave my wife alone. I can't do that. Why not? Because I love her. I almost laughed. You love her? You're married with kids, Brent. You love your wife. My marriage has been over for years. Does your wife know that? Because according to her Instagram, you just took a family vacation to Aspen last month. His face flushed. You've been stalking my family? I've been investigating my wife's affair. Your family just happened to be collateral damage. This is between you and Marissa. No, it's between all of us now. Your wife, your kids, Marissa, me. You involved all of us when you decided to have an affair instead of getting divorced first. Brent stood up abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. No, you don't, but you're going to anyway because you need something from me. He sat back down. What do you think I need? You need me to be reasonable. You need me to not make waves that might reach your wife or your business partners. You need me to quietly disappear so you and Marissa can ride off into the sunset without any messy complications. And I'm not going to do any of those things. The color drained from his face. What do you mean? I mean your wife already knows about the affair. She hired a private investigator who has photos of you and Marissa at 3 different hotels. She's filing for divorce next week. Brent's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I also mean that I've documented every hotel visit, every restaurant charge, every lie Marissa told to cover her tracks. If she tries to claim adultery isn't grounds for divorce in Maine, I have enough evidence to prove otherwise. You can't, I can, and I will. You wanted to play house with my wife? Congratulations. Now you get to pay for the privilege. I stood up and dropped a 20 on the table. Enjoy your new relationship, Brent. I hope it's worth everything it's going to cost you. I walked toward the door, leaving him sitting alone at the table. As I reached the exit, I heard him call my name. Caleb, wait. I turned around. What? What if I end it with Marissa? What if I go back to my wife and we both pretend this never happened? Then you'll be a coward as well as an adulterer. But you'd leave my family alone? Your family was never my target, Brent. You were. I left him sitting in the knot, staring into his untouched beer and contemplating the wreckage of his carefully constructed life. Outside, the Maine evening was crisp and clear, with stars visible despite the city lights. My phone buzzed with a text from Marissa. Brent told me what you said. We need to talk. I typed back. No, we don't. I'm coming over. I won't be there. Where will you be? Somewhere you're not. I drove to Sam's house and found him in his garage, working on a motorcycle he'd been rebuilding for 2 years. He looked up when I walked in, wiping grease from his hands with an old rag. How'd it go with Brent? About like you'd expect. He tried to buy you off? He tried to negotiate. Same thing, different approach. Sam set down his wrench and opened 2 beers from a cooler in the corner. And I told him to enjoy the consequences of his choices. Think he will? I think he's about to discover that actions have prices he never considered. We drank in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of the city settling into night. Finally, Sam spoke up. You know, I always thought Marissa was too good for you. I looked at him sharply. Thanks for the support. I mean that as a compliment. She was always trying to be perfect, always performing. You're just real. Real doesn't pay for luxury staging consultations. No, but it pays for everything else. Loyalty, honesty, showing up when you say you will. Marissa never understood that. She understood it. She just didn't value it. Her loss. Yeah, her loss. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office signing the final divorce papers. Marissa had tried to contest the settlement, claiming she deserved half of everything despite the adultery evidence. Her lawyer had advised her to take the deal. She got her car, her personal belongings, and enough money to start over somewhere else. I got the house, the savings, and my dignity. She's not happy about this, my lawyer said, sliding the papers across his desk. I'm not happy about being cheated on for 3 months. I guess we're even. She wants to know if you'll consider mediation. For what? She says she wants closure. The divorce decree is her closure. I signed the last document and stood up. Is that everything? That's everything. Congratulations, Mr. Turner. You're officially single. I drove home through downtown Portland, past the hotels where Marissa had conducted her affair, past the staging company where she'd worked until Brent's wife made some strategic phone calls to their biggest clients. The arts district looked different now, less threatening and more like what it actually was, expensive real estate built on the bones of working neighborhoods. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. It was Mrs. Graham. Caleb, dear, I thought you should know. That Tesla is back. I looked across the street and saw her standing in her front window, holding one of her police scanners like a weapon. Where? Parked outside the Riverside Apartments, same place Marissa's been staying since she moved out. Thanks for letting me know. He's been there every night this week. I think they're planning something. Probably. You be careful, dear. People do desperate things when they're cornered. I hung up and sat in my car, looking at the house Marissa and I had shared for 5 years. It looked the same from the outside, but everything inside had changed. The furniture was still arranged the way she'd left it, but the spaces felt different without her presence filling them. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Ellie. Marissa wants to see you. I typed back. Marissa knows where I live. She's afraid you'll call the police. Should I? She just wants to apologize. She can mail me a card. Please, Caleb. She's really struggling. She should have thought of that before she started sleeping with Brent. That's over. Brent went back to his wife. I stared at the message for a long time. When? Last week. His wife threatened to take everything in the divorce. He chose his money over Marissa. Smart choice. Marissa has nothing left. No job, no relationship, no friends. Everyone's turned against her. Actions have consequences. She knows that now. Good. Maybe she'll make better choices next time. I turned off my phone and went inside. The house was quiet, peaceful in a way it hadn't been for months. I poured myself a bourbon and sat on the back porch, watching the sun set over Portland's skyline. 20 minutes later, I heard a car door slam in my driveway. Through the kitchen window, I saw Marissa walking toward my front door. She looked smaller than I remembered, diminished by the weight of her choices. I opened the door before she could knock. Hello, Marissa. Hello, Caleb. She was wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual designer outfits. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wasn't wearing makeup. She looked like the woman I'd married in college, before she'd decided that wasn't good enough. Ellie said you wanted to apologize. I do. Can I come in? No. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Please. I just need 5 minutes. You had 8 years, Marissa. You used them all up. I know I hurt you. You didn't hurt me. You betrayed me. There's a difference. Tears started rolling down her cheeks, but they looked genuine this time. I know. I know I destroyed everything good between us. Yes, you did. I want to make it right. You can't. Some things can't be fixed once they're broken. I love you, Caleb. I know I didn't show it, but I do love you. You love the idea of me. You love having someone reliable to fall back on when your other plans don't work out. But you're not in love with me, and you never were. That's not true. It is true, and we both know it. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Brent left me. I heard. He said he couldn't risk losing his family. Smart man. I have nothing left. You have your freedom. Isn't that what you wanted? I wanted you. No, you wanted someone better than me. You just settled for me until something better came along." She started crying harder. "What am I supposed to do now?" "You're supposed to live with the consequences of your choices. You're supposed to figure out who you are when you're not performing for someone else. You're supposed to grow up. I can't do this alone. You should have thought of that before you decided you didn't want to do it with me." I stepped back and started to close the door. "Goodbye, Marissa." "Caleb, wait. No. We're done. We've been done for months. You're just finally catching up." I closed the door and locked it, listening to her cry on my front porch for 10 minutes before she finally got back in her car and drove away. I poured another bourbon and sat back down on the porch. The stars were coming out over Portland, bright and clear in the cold Maine sky. Somewhere across town, Brent Dale was probably having dinner with his family, grateful to have escaped the consequences of his choices. Somewhere else, Marissa was learning what it felt like to be alone with the wreckage of her decisions. And I was here, in the house I'd bought and paid for, drinking bourbon and watching the stars, free from the weight of other people's lies, free from the burden of trying to save something that was already over. My phone buzzed one last time, a text from Marissa. "I'm sorry for everything." I deleted it without responding and turned off my phone. Some apologies come too late to matter. Some damage can't be